All right, that is the Trenchies talk show. You know, when you hear that, you know what's about to happen. This is Psychobabble. My name is Ed. I'm a host here. We have a rotating set of hosts. Usually it's me or Amanda or John. Serena used to be our host, but she had to step away because of changes at her work, so we're looking for a fourth. I think it's going to probably be Ashley and or John, or both. Jonathan Marks, that is. So stay tuned for that. Today, as always, what you hear today is strictly the opinions of myself or my guests and not representing those of the station. Also, don't take what you're going to hear today as substitute for what you would need to get from your own professional. Also, if anything triggers any thoughts of self-harm or suicide, I want you to remember that you can always reach out to 988. You can either text or call. It's an awesome system. It's available everywhere, and that's a great resource. So just remember the thoughts and opinions you hear here are just those of the guest and or myself. Having said all that, I have two awesome guests today. I've been wanting, part of the reason for Psychobabble is to educate the community about issues concerning mental health. And sometimes, you know, we do talk about mental illness. And I think a lot of folks are fairly familiar now. We have so much talk in our culture about trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression. It's not that we can't learn more about those things, but I think folks are learning a lot about them, and there's a lot more acceptance in the community and in our country in general for folks who are struggling with those disorders. What I think is still kind of a mystery to a lot of people is schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is one of the most devastating, persistent mental illnesses that there are. It's very difficult to treat, at least that's been my experience. Hopefully today we're going to hear from these two folks about some hopeful developments in that world. So I want to introduce my guests. First, I want to introduce Dr. Aaron Brinen. I'm just going to turn it over to you, Doc. So I want you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then after that, I'm going to shift over to Robin Nobling. So we have two folks, but Dr. Brinen, why don't you take it away?
Hey, no problem. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Dr. Aaron Brinen. I'm an assistant professor at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. Part of my journey over the years has been helping to develop a treatment alongside Dr. Aaron Beck, who helped create cognitive behavioral therapy. And it was a treatment that was targeting those least likely to engage in psychosocial treatments, particularly those with the problems of motivation and connection, right? The negative symptoms of schizophrenia. About 3 years ago, at the height of the pandemic, I was approached by the Department of Psychiatry to come down because the Department of Psychiatry at Vanderbilt was very interested in increasing their psychosocial treatments for psychosis and schizophrenia. And so I interviewed and I came down and joined an amazing group here where we're doing research, particularly focusing on persecutory delusions. And I also get to train the psychiatry residents here. So awesome. It's a lot of fingers and a lot of pies.
What is your background? How did you come to this kind of work?
So my background, that's a funny one. So I actually originally didn't get my degree in psychology. So I actually came to psychology as a second career. Mm-hmm. And so along the way, I actually started by treating post-traumatic stress disorder. My plan was to treat individuals at the VA, those who had served us, and treat PTSD for the rest of my career. And a lot of my work was focused on that. And when I met Aaron Beck, he slowly got me to start working on this treatment with him. And that's really sort of taken over my life, which has been a really wonderful piece of it. And so developing the treatment alongside him, going out and training people across the state of Georgia, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, working with both individuals who are chronic in the illness as well as first episode psychosis individuals.
Can you give a very quick thumbnail sketch of who Aaron Beck is?
Sure.
Very big dude.
Very big dude. It was really tragic. We lost him at 100 years old in 3 months. Mm-hmm. So it's an amazing thing. Aaron Beck originally was going to be a neurologist. And when he had to do a psychiatry rotation as a part of the Korean War, he had to do a psychiatry rotation because they were low on psychiatrists. He wanted to figure out this psychiatry thing a little bit more. And while he was doing his training as a psychoanalyst, he started to develop ideas and research the basis of psychoanalysis. which was the prominent treatment of the day. And as he did that, he started to realize some other ideas, and he developed a therapy called cognitive therapy, which is really focused on this idea of the things that we tell ourselves and the things we do impact how we feel, and ultimately what we do, and that creates a massive cycle. And so he really championed and started this whole new way of approaching individuals. And he really started studying it because he realized that studying these things and knowing, do these treatments work or do they not work, was really important.
I feel like Aaron Beck was responsible for making therapy available to the masses.
I think that's a great way of saying it. Yeah.
I mean, as opposed to just psychoanalysis, which is not available to the masses.
No. Yeah.
So I appreciate that. And you got to work with Dr. Aaron Beck, which is amazing.
Yes.
When I first saw your name, I thought, well, maybe his parents really loved Aaron Beck and they named him Aaron, and
Nope.
they wanted to have him work with Aaron. So no, that's just a coincidence. All right. Thank you for your introduction. Robin, why don't you tell us about yourself and how you came to do the kind of work you do and how you got involved? First of all, tell us who you are, but also what is NAMI? But let's start with you first.
Sure. So I'm Robin Nobling. I'm the Executive Director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness for Davidson County. I like to tell people that even though the name is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, we're all about wellness. NAMI itself is a 40-year-old organization. It exists in all 50 states. It was started by two women in Wisconsin who were accompanying their adult children to psychiatry appointments, and were at that time, as was common, getting blamed for the condition of their children. Mm-hmm. And so they started this across the kitchen table, and it has grown. It is a true grassroots organization in that it started in somebody's home. It started in different places around the country, and first you had AMI, the Alliance for Mental Illness. Kind of figured out nobody was for it, and and then eventually there was FAMI and TAMI. It's just the states. It started incorporating the states, and now we have the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and the organization is made up. It's a peer-to-peer, each one teach one organization of people with direct lived experience of a mental health condition, and their families. It's the largest family organization in the country. And we work very closely with the National Institute of Mental Health. Mm-hmm. We have signature evidence-based programs that have proven to be very helpful for both families and individuals that are dealing with this, because nobody does this in a vacuum. Right. And we also are very strong legislatively. Basically, we're a noisy little bunch.
Right. That's cool. And
yeah.
You have to be, because you're trying to help a marginalized population which doesn't have its own political power necessarily. So you have to be there for them.
Well, and absolutely. And stigma is one of the biggest things that we fight. So what we do here at NAMI Davidson is we support, educate, advocate, and create awareness. And when we do that, we've got, and almost everything, it's not great for a business model. Almost everything is free. Right. But almost everything that we do is free. It's peer-led. And so that means any support groups, our website, namidavidson.org, you'll see a calendar. And so there are support groups. And you jump in, you jump out. You don't have to stay,
It's a great resource. We actually, here at the station, we have a PSA where we promote
and
you guys
anywhere
all the
you
time.
go in the country, there are some basic programs. Mm-hmm. Anywhere you go in the country, you should be able to connect with a NAMI and kind of fall into something similar. For me personally, I started my journey with this stuff when I was 7. My father, who was an award-winning salesman, my dad got hit with this in '63. Oh, that'll tell you where I'm at. And that's just fine. But my dad got hit with it at a time when stigma was great and there wasn't a whole lot of understanding. Mm-hmm. And so it really devastated our family. And the man who I was used to coming home, and my siblings, 3 of us, would be scooted up behind a chair, and he'd get on his hands and knees and crawling, come after us. There was a lot of giggling and laughter, and my dad was just an easygoing guy, but that changed. Yeah. And so we had 8 years of major crisis, mm-hmm. some pretty scary times. But I will say, I've always said I was very proud of my father.
And you've been involved with NAMI as a active leader for how long?
Oh, I've been an executive director here for about 11 years, and prior to that, 2.5 years with the state organization.
That's great. I really appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
We're going to come back to Robin in a moment when we talk about the supports in the community, but I'm going to shift back to Dr. Brinen and just ask you, Doc, what is schizophrenia? Can you give us a working definition of it? I know that can be a complicated question, but do your best.
Yeah, no, I think the way you said it is really perfect, which is it's a very complicated question, right? It's a collection of experiences that people can have. I think schizophrenia, as well as the schizophrenia spectrum of diagnoses, are a way of labeling and lumping together these experiences. There's arguments in the field right now that abolishing the term schizophrenia might be really valuable because it carries so much stigma with it and so many problems. But the best way to describe it is it's a series of experiences, including odd or unusual beliefs that are not in line with the dominant culture, anomalous experiences, meaning sort of experiences that other people aren't having. So they might be hearing things, they might be seeing things, they may be feeling things. Also sort of disorganization, meaning sort of trouble getting your words out really well, trouble organizing the things you're doing, as well as a series of symptoms that have to do with a loss of things like motivation and connection to other people. And the biggest part is that it really disrupts your ability to function. So people can have all of these experiences and still function really well, both socially, in your family, occupationally. But if it disrupts those, then it becomes this problem, which ultimately people end up calling schizophrenia or psychosis.
Right. To ask a more specific maybe question, as a therapist myself, sometimes I have to, treat and help folks with this kind of disorder. And we talk about positive symptoms and negative symptoms. Could you explain what that means and what those are?
Sure. Firstly, it's a really complicated way to explain to people. So everybody's always confused about the positive symptoms and negative.
Right. These are the good symptoms.
Exactly.
No, that's not what we mean.
So it comes from a very behavioral idea, right? Which is the idea of positive means you add something to. So essentially, where something shouldn't be, there is something. So for example, we shouldn't necessarily hear things that other people don't hear. So that's been added to. So those are your hallucinations. I might have these sort of unfounded threat beliefs that somebody might be harming me, right? So ultimately some people call those delusions, right? So where that shouldn't be, it's added. Negative symptoms are where there should be something, it's been removed. So negative means removing of something. And so those are problems with motivation, those are problems connecting with other people, those are problems with expression on your face, and providing expression. And so those have really old terms like avolition, apathy, asociality, all the A's they call them, flat affect.
Right.
And so those are sort of the clusters of symptoms.
Yeah. Do you know, I think you do know, but what is the, because this man works at Vanderbilt Medical Center, folks. So I know you do the research here. So what is the most recent science telling us about where schizophrenia comes from? What causes it? What are the factors that are going to contribute to someone being more likely to have this disorder?
So the good news or the bad news is that it's multifactorial. There's lots of reasons that might add to it. There's ones that feel very uncontrollable. They're things that we just don't have any ability to put our hands around. So those are the things most people think about. Biological, genetic, things like that. And then there are sort of factors that have to do with social ones, things like experiences of trauma, bullying. In the United Kingdom as well as in Europe, there's a user movement that really says stop asking what's wrong with me, ask what happened to me. So it's really focusing on those experiences, things like poverty, minoritization. And then there are psychological factors, things like worry, trouble with sleep, things like lowered self-esteem. And those really add to the chance of having, developing these symptoms. And those are really accelerants. The last group are things that we can do. We can actually have control as individuals over those experiences.
To what degree is there a genetic factor here, or is there a genetic factor?
So there is a clear background and research on the idea that there is a genetic factor to it, but there's genetic factors to many of the things that we experience. Right. We know overall the best evidence I think that we have is the idea that the genetic factor says that something is going to happen. You're going to have something happen to you, right, when we're looking at sort of the genetic component of it.
Right. So before I get to, tell us real quickly, and then we'll come back to it, Dr. Brinen, what are you working on at Vanderbilt? What is your specialty over there?
So the things that I'm really focused in on are the psychosocial treatments for, in my research, are the psychosocial treatments for schizophrenia and psychosis. And so part of the work that I'm really excited about right now is work that I'm doing alongside Dr. Julia Sheffield, who's really leading this research in targeting persecutory delusions. And Dr. Sheffield is really focused on this idea of belief updating, right? The way that we react to the world around us as a driver of particularly persecutory delusions. And so that's been a very exciting study that I've been able to work on along with Dr. Sheffield, as well as we then get to provide really high quality treatment to the individuals in the community. And then my work is also about putting psychosocial treatments inside the medication management checks when you meet with a psychiatrist. And so I've just finished a study where we've combined psychotherapy along with medication management sessions. Because over in the past, psychiatrists provided psychotherapy during your medication management. Right. And over the last 20 years, that has really dropped off, except for individuals with schizophrenia who never got that. Right. And so now we're really targeting those individuals to get them moving forward and getting the treatment they want.
Right. I think there's kind of a prejudice in a way that folks with, a disorder like schizophrenia aren't really they're not benefiting from therapy. They're not benefiting from these kinds of treatment. That's not really true, is it?
It is not true at all. It's not true at all. In fact, when I did this massive project in the state of Georgia, we actually sat down with the insurance company so that they could really talk with them about being like, these treatments are going to help people. So you should reimburse for them. Because many people believed insurance won't reimburse somebody with schizophrenia. Right. For psychosocial treatments. This was a couple of years ago, but Robin's giving me a face, but this was a couple of years ago.
Wow.
But it was really sitting down, so we all got on the same page that, people benefit. Yeah. And in Europe, they're years ahead of us in both early intervention and individuals who are further along in their illness.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is that Europe is ahead of us? Because I've heard that. So what's going on there? What's your own or your professional opinion about that? Robin.
I want to hear what Robin says.
Well, I'll jump in on this, and that's I really do believe, and this is something that Dr. Heckers has shared too, and I want to add Australia because I think Australia is farther ahead than almost anybody on treating this as the medical and biological and social condition that it is, and the stigma is less. There is less stigma, and so there is an openness to not separating those people over there from the general population and treating like we treat everybody. We want to welcome everybody into treatment. And speaking of therapy, we know that if you're going to have something that impacts your life in such a negative way, talk therapy can be very, very helpful to help you do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad I didn't know. I didn't think I was going to ask y'all that question.
Glad you
What's
did.
going on in our culture that we want to marginalize everyone and not try to bring them into our mainstream life? And I think America does that. Unfortunately, the United States does that quite a bit. But now that I got you in this discussion, Robin, how does NAMI, your organization, interact with the academic research treatment world coming from Dr. Brenen's perspective? So what's the synthesis there?
So one of the things that we look at is these are the therapeutic partners. These are the clinical partners. But what I've said very frequently is that you tend to see your therapist or whoever you're working with for 1 hour a week, and our folks live the other 23 hours.
Right.
We know something,
right.
And so that's the basis from which we share is the direct lived experience. We encourage those professional relationships, those clinical relationships. They're essential, especially with this particular area. But when you want to know how to live with it, come to us, and that includes the families.
Right.
And we'll tell you this is how we live with it.
So there's a back and forth as far as how you contribute to the knowledge base of
There
the
is a back
academic
and
side
forth.
of it, and then how you're getting that from the academic side, the research, the most cutting edge understanding of the way the brain works and these kinds of things.
Well, and there truly is a back and forth because we have a relationship with Vanderbilt and all the other providers in the area. And so we have a public education series that Dr. Brinen has come out 3 times now, I think, and Dr. Heckers and other folks. So we're bringing the latest to the community.
And they've been such great partners in that, so when Dr. Sheffield, when we approached them about this study, there's 2 parts that we all love at Vanderbilt about NAMI Davidson County. One, they're great partners and they helped us to get people who'd be interested in the treatment. 2, they also are really protective of making sure that what we're doing is okay for the individuals that we all serve.
Right.
And so it's so great to have such wonderful partners.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like NAMI really pays attention to the research, what's coming out of the work of Dr. Brinen and others. I mean, you're not just working off of the assumptions of 20 years ago. You're also keeping up with the most cutting edge understanding of this disorder.
And we do that. We've got Vanderbilt in our backyard.
Right, right on.
We take advantage of that. It's wonderful. But also nationally, every year at our conferences and every year, throughout the year, we are fed. I have a daily feed from the National Institute of Mental Health and the National Institute of Health, picking up what's out there.
I'll ask you to say this again, but if someone, either one, wanted to get help from NAMI because they were struggling, or they wanted to volunteer or contribute, how should they go about doing that?
Really, one of the best ways, 2 ways. You can get on our website, which is namidavidson.org, or you can call the office, our helpline. We have a 9-to-5 information helpline Monday through Fridays, and that's 615-891-4724. And that'll put you, folks will put you in touch with our free services.
Now I ask you to tell me that again before we end today. Before we go to our first break, though, Dr. Brinen was saying something very provocative, I thought, which is maybe we should get rid of the term schizophrenia. And I remember years and years ago when I was learning about things and looking at the term schizophrenia and what it used to mean and then what it meant later and then what it meant. It seems like that term has just changed its meaning over the years, and it makes sense in a way. But if we didn't call it schizophrenia, what might we want to refer to this set of issues as?
I think oftentimes we refer to it as psychosis, or we can just refer to what the person's actually experiencing. So if I show up and I hear things that other people don't hear that are really scary, let's just talk about that. That's the person's experience, not this bizarre term that means, split brain or whatever it means. And so, or if I'm really worried about the fact that I feel like people are trying to harm me, let's talk about the fact that I'm worrying about that. Let's talk about what functionally is getting in the way of me living the life that I want, that I deserve.
We're going to go on a music break. And by the way, this song, I just want to be clear, was chosen by Dr. Brinen, not by me. I'm putting him on the spot.
When it's
Support for WXNA comes from the Special Olympics. Before I say one more word, let me make sure I got all that done. Okay, the Special Olympics, providing year-round health screening, sports training, athletic competition, a variety of Olympic-style or Olympic-type sports for children and adults with intellectual disabilities. The goal is to develop physical fitness, demonstrate courage, experience joy, participate in the sharing of gifts, skills, and friendships with their family and their friends and their community. Special Olympics transforms lives through the joy of sport every day, everywhere. More information at specialolympicstn.org. Tune in to the French Connection Monday mornings at 11 for your weekly dose of French music with DJ Natasha. That's French Connection Mondays at 11 a.m. on WXNA 101.5 FM, streaming WXNAFM.org. Remember, WXNA is for the people, by the people, free for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a pretty sweet deal when you think about it, but we need your support to keep us going. Don't slide, don't side with the suits. Keep independent commercial-free radio alive. Go to WXNAFM.org, donate, or become a member today. We're going to do one more song and then come back with our guest. So stay tuned for this awesome discussion, but I felt like we needed to Across the Universe, the Beatles. I don't know. I just felt like that song would be a good fit today. I don't know. But, Dr. Brinen chose I Want to Be Sedated. So, I don't know. Was that dedicated to your spouse, Dr. Brinen? We're not going to have a therapy session with Dr. Brinen today. Anyway, I want to say how much I appreciate Robin and Dr. Brinen for being in. Again, if you just joined us, this is a discussion about the diagnosis of schizophrenia. And maybe we can just broadly say, psychotic disorders when folks are struggling with psychosis and other symptoms that now sometimes we call schizophrenia, but maybe it's a variety of things. And Dr. Brinen was just saying that, sometimes that term might get in the way. It's certainly, it can be marginalizing and has you might say, suspect history, even if you look at the history of the term. But what I want to focus on in our last 20 or so minutes here is like treatment and hope. So let's start with what is some support in the community. And this, of course, Robin has already spoken about this a little bit, but let's if we have to restate it, that's fine. But what are the various social supports that NAMI provides for folks struggling with this? So,
and the folks struggling with this are not just the individual at the center of it, it's the families too. And so we have services for both. And when you walk into a NAMI meeting, or most of the time we're online now at the vote of our participants, when you walk in, you get that feeling like, oh, these people get it. I can say anything, and they're not leaving. For anything that I say, we have a safe place where you talk about suicidal ideation. As long as you don't have an active plan, come talk about it. Right. Come talk about your psychosis and the thoughts that you've got and you're uncomfortable with. They're scary, but this is a place you can talk about it. So we've got evidence-based trainings that we do and education that we do for both families and individuals and peer social support groups, where you come in, you introduce yourself if you want. Everything is voluntary, and then share 2 feeling words, and then the session, we go for an hour, and whatever percolates up during the feelings check, we'll touch on. Yep. But one night, nothing in February. February is rough for everybody with the temperatures going up. One night, nothing but suicidal ideation. Yeah. Another night, nothing but pie. It's whatever.
Very flexible.
Very flexible and human.
Right.
Very human.
So I know you just mentioned family. If I'm a mother or a father or an uncle or just someone who's caring about someone and I want some support, I come to NAMI, and what am I going to expect to get? I'm not afflicted with the disorder, but I love someone who is. So what's in it for me there?
So first of all, one of the things that we want everybody to know is we're not here to fix anybody.
Right on.
There is no magic. But we do have an understanding and experience that covers a lot of ground. And maybe you'll come to a group and find something that you haven't heard before. Maybe there's a strategy, a tool, or maybe we just teach you how to take care of yourself during this.
Right. That's good. Okay, so we have those family supports, and then we also have treatments that are evolving and developing, and this is one of the reasons why we brought in Dr. Brinen. So Give us the update here, Doc. What's going on? What's the new research telling us? What are the new interventions that seem to be having some positive effect?
Sure. So it's there's a saying in show business that it took 20 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
And so what we know is we've had a history of applying cognitive behavioral therapy to psychosis, and that goes back. I was saying 20 years for a long time, but I think it's like 25, 30 years we've been doing applying essentially the model for anxiety to psychosis and really successfully, right? It has a nice moderate effect in helping people move forward. And it's actually why it's the treatment of choice in Europe, is that people are supposed to be offered both medication or CBT for psychosis when they first become unwell with psychosis. The really exciting work that's starting to happen is that now that we've sort of gotten past that first gate of does CBT work for individuals with psychosis, we're starting to focus those treatments and really not talk about treating schizophrenia or all of psychosis, but really focusing in on the individual symptoms. So for example, a group out of Oxford, England, at Oxford University, have spent about 10, 15 years focused on persecutory delusions, which are essentially an unfounded threat belief, an unfounded belief that somebody's trying to harm us. And they identified 5 causal factors, contributory causal factors to persecutory to those beliefs. They tested each of those factors to see if when you impact that factor, does it have an impact on that belief? And then they pulled it together into a treatment. That treatment has the same effect as the treatments we have for social anxiety. And we're really good at treating social anxiety these days. And so that effect is extremely large, and it is held on way past the end of treatment. The best part is we're also targeting factors that people want help with. We're really talking about worry, troubles with sleep, self-confidence, trouble getting outside and doing the things, feeling safe enough to do the things that you want. Those things in our mind that we hear that sort of bug us. Those are all things that we all want help with. And so not only are they factors that most of the individuals have, they're also the factors that those individuals want help with.
So the 5 factors again
are worry, self-confidence, sleep, anxious avoidance, or that fear of going out and doing the things that you want, and then anomalous experiences, hearing voices or experiencing those things.
Right. I feel like those 5 factors apply to so many of my own clients who aren't struggling with psychosis.
Absolutely.
Except for the last one, but all the first 4, almost universal with the folks I work with.
The other piece of it is also that we need to be coordinated, right? So we don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. So really we're focusing in on team approaches. So at Vanderbilt and across the state of Tennessee, in fact, across the United States, we've got coordinated specialty care. It's where we bring together the psychotherapist, the psychiatrist, a supported employment specialist, an individual with a lived experience, as well as other professionals. We bring them all together. We work as a team to serve those individuals. And particularly, coordinated specialty care is applied to first episode psychosis, as well as we have other ACT teams, which have been around for a long time, which is assertive community treatment.
Right. I'm going to put you both on the spot a little bit. So I used to work in a psychiatric hospital, and I was a social worker, and I worked all over the hospital, mostly in the adolescent unit, but also in the other units, also in the acute unit. And I don't have a lot of great things to say about it. And I'm curious what and I don't mean to put you too much on the spot, Dr. Brinen, because Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital is just one of those psychiatric. We have Vanderbilt, we have Parthenon, we have Madison Campus, Skyline. We have some others that I'm forgetting, but I feel like there's a real lack of effectiveness there. So I'm wondering if you could make the rules on how we deal with people with this disorder when they have to go into a psychiatric setting for 3 or 4 or 5 days or a week or whatever. What do we need to do that we're not doing now, and what are we doing now that maybe isn't all that awesome? I know it's a tough question, and you can actually say it's too tough, but
no, I think
I'd like you to jump in there.
Ed, I think it's a really great question. The first thing I want to say is this: I've spent all of my career traveling away from my family around the United States, around the world, training individuals in hospitals and other settings. And the one thing I can say that is common amongst them is I frequently come in contact with providers who desperately want to be effective and desperately want to help them. Are there people who may not be good out there? Absolutely. Have I bumped into them? Right. But what I know is largely individuals who serve folks who are suffering with psychosis desperately want to help those individuals.
Totally.
Whether I agree with what they're doing or whether I don't, that's a ball game of a different color.
Absolutely.
But
I think they're very well motivated. I'm talking about the systems
right.
really in
I
place.
think the starting spot is shared decision making, and developing a formulation and an understanding of what that in a psychosocial understanding of what is driving that individual, right? The reality of it is there are many individuals across the world that where they've been at this so long, they're not going to medicate it out of them. And medication, pills don't teach skills. And so ultimately, developing an understanding with the individual, helping them feel heard, helping them feel understood, and then saying, hey, there may be a way out of this. We could just try this thing together. And so leveling a hierarchy and using shared decision making, and not false shared decision making, but genuinely sitting with the individual and helping them feel understood. Because when you feel understood, you're not alone.
I feel like that's been the dream of the so-called treatment team for decades. Like the idea that the patient / client / consumer, whatever you want to call our person, is supposed to be participating in that with agency. And,
right.
And to be honest, I don't always see that in a hospital setting. But
you've seen the treatment plans, Ed. And so what I would say is, if we want to do it, you got to do it. So at the end of the day, if I say I want you to be an equal partner in your treatment, and then I go, let me dictate that you're going to name all of your medicine, and you're going to shower 3 times a day, and you're going to respond by my 3rd cue, that's not including somebody in. Right. When I ask you, what do you want to be doing? What do you want to get? Right? What makes it tough to do that? Help me understand. I want to see it the way you see it.
Yeah.
When I do that, then I invite somebody to be a partner in it.
Right, Robin?
Yeah, and so I think what's important to know too is the way we're set up right now is this is the acute phase. This is the acute phase of care. Somebody comes in when they're at their very worst, and in some places, like our regional institutes, they're not going to have as much agency. I'd like them to, but the truth of the matter is, what we see a lot here at NAMI is that people go in for an acute stay. Hopefully, they're open to some of that, because sometimes they don't come around or understand or lack that insight, and you want that shared decision making, but sometimes they cannot participate in it, and we don't have the luxury of them staying for a long time. Not everybody has insurance. Insurance doesn't want them to stay there that long. There's limits on that. So I think one of the things I see is the continuity of care. And I'm talking about the whole population, at all spectrums, those that, if you've got 10 care, actually you can get some care. If you don't have money, you can get some care. Those people that are working for the big box stores that have those big deductibles, those are the people that are usually suffering the most, because they can't afford their deductibles and care.
I can tell you that's the truth.
Yeah, I know. We see it. We hear it all the time.
Right.
And by the way, we'll give the number again, but we are a good source of information and referral.
Say it again. Say it again, Robin.
So the number is 615-891-4724. And we're a 9 to 5 weekday information and referral source for mental health. I don't say we have answers for every question, but we're pretty well known around here for being an excellent resource for your questions, with insurance, without insurance.
And people can go online and find you.
They can go online and find us too.
At NAMI Davidson.
NAMIDavidson.org. But continuity of care, is so important, because let's
unpack that a little bit. Just educate people. When we say that term, continuity of care, what do we mean?
What I'm talking about is what's happening once you get out. Now, Dr. Brinen and at Vanderbilt, they've been working hard to establish things that'll transition people from an acute care stay back into community and social. We at NAMI Davidson are also working on something that we've just finished a capstone, where we have a recovery guide. And that recovery guide, we have a thick one for the families and a briefer one for the individual. And what we find is the step down from mental health once you come out of an acute stay. Maybe there's IOP if your insurance will pay for it, but if it's only mental health and not substance abuse, you're going to the bedroom. And we're going to try like heck to get you to the living room. Then we have some very good supported employment programs, but that is too big a leap. So we are working with Vanderbilt We're their first social work fellowship program. And on transitioning from that acute phase and moving people. And there are some other things going on, but we've not focused enough on community support for transition.
Awesome. Couldn't agree more. Dr. Brinen, if a therapist is listening to us, I really want to get kind of trained in this. I want to get trained in using CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy techniques to deal with folks dealing with these kinds of issues and troubles. What's the best way for that person to get trained up?
So I think one of the first ways is to be trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, understanding how to apply it. We also have an organization called the North American CBT for Psychosis Network. And so you can look that up online. And it talks about opportunities for training, and that's sort of across the United States. We're going to continue to build our ability to train people and provide workshops. People who want an introduction to it. I happen to have a YouTube channel that I don't get any finances from
He's
this
not
YouTube
selling
channel.
anything, people.
I'm not
He's
selling
just letting
anything.
You know this exists.
And I also don't have a beard anymore, so that's the other thing. But where you can look at sort of how to apply some of these approaches to psychosis, and it's recoverwithcbt.com, and
Awesome.
you can look that up on YouTube. But really there are good resources out there for both what's called the Feeling Safe program, which is Daniel Freeman's program out of out of Oxford University, as well as we're going to continue to provide trainings at Vanderbilt, where we'll be doing online workshops.
Speaking of continuity of care, do both of you, or I guess, Robin, this might be, I don't know, it should be both of you really, do y'all have any contact with folks like the Mental Health Co-op, Centerstone? What's,
we're
what's
connected
that
to
relationship?
everybody. We're connected throughout this with every major provider, including the health department, the sheriff's department. We actually, I've been with the sheriff department's behavioral health unit. I've been on that unit with them. We go out, my Don Liacano, our program manager, goes out to DeBerry Special Needs. We go out there. We are lifespan too.
Everywhere.
We are from 3 on up, and we are also multicultural. We are now working within the Muslim women's group. We've been invited to the mosque. We've been to Ganesha Temple. We've worked in the Chinese American Association.
I'm glad you're bringing that up. And Nashville is one of the most international cities in the country. We have refugee resettlement history here, so we have all these communities which might sometimes feel disconnected or marginalized. So it sounds like you're trying to reach out to all those
They have different cultural attitudes towards mental health, so we just need to listen first, and then see what we can do to be supportive.
Right on.
And I mean, I can speak our partners at Mental Health Co-op and Centerstone are wonderful, and they've been wonderful partners both in research. But even though we're an academic medical center, we provide treatment at Vanderbilt. We provide a lot of treatment. So I'm super fortunate to work with amazing colleagues like Julia Sheffield, Jeff Stovall, Maya Skikic, and led by the chair of our department, Dr. Stefan Heckers, who still sees individuals on the inpatient unit, outpatient. But the most exciting thing that we're starting right now is we are starting an outpatient clinic where more than 50% of the individuals we'll be serving will be funded by TennCare, which is our Medicaid. Okay. And the goal of this is going to be I'm sorry, I'm like tingling. I'm so excited.
It's very exciting.
The goal of this space, which is at the Belcourt clinic for Vanderbilt, will be to combine evidence-based psychotherapy and psychopharmacology in the same space. So they will be receiving the highest grade of evidence-based psychotherapy for psychosis or whatever that individual shows up with. So if they have PTSD, they will get evidence-based treatment for that, depression, and it will be provided by many of our psychiatry residents will be providing that psychotherapy, as well as the psychopharmacology, as well as psychology interns, psychology postdocs. And they will be getting the treatments that have the highest evidence behind them, like the Feeling Safe program, like the COMMAND trial, which targets command hallucinations, like prolonged exposure for PTSD. So people will get the treatment that is going to be most likely to help them move forward and get back this life that they want so desperately.
These two people clearly love what they do. Y'all really do. I mean, they're excited to talk about it. They're smiling the whole time they're talking today. They're colleagues and friends. It's just awesome to have them here, and I really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, thanks for having us, and thanks for talking about this subject and giving us
Absolutely.
the opportunity
Sure.
to share.
Sure, we might yank you back on here again sometime in the future when other things come up. Because speaking of the mental health co-op and the Centerstone folks, I do want to focus a little bit more on community support for everybody.
And something I'll throw out to you and your listeners is let's make sure we're talking about mental health and the justice system.
Absolutely.
Because we're very active in that too.
Yes,
I
yeah.
serve on the mayor's council around that.
Well, guys, thank you. We're going to go out here with my choice here. This is an old song from the Flock of Seagulls, Telecommunication. Everyone have a great weekend. Bye.